Join me as I dive into the horror movie tropes that still give me chills, and see if I can handle watching them all without screaming. We're going to peel back the layers of what makes us jump, what makes us think, and what keeps us coming back for more. Horror movies have a way of captivating us, don't they? With their potent blend of suspense, fear, and pure adrenaline, it's no wonder we're drawn to the thrill. They speak a universal language of fear, using a shared vocabulary of terrifying ideas. But have you ever stopped to think about the specific words in that vocabulary? The tropes that make these films so effective and at times, so predictable. From the iconic self-aware scream queens of the 90s, to the more intense, soul-shaking screams that characterize modern horror, these elements have become deeply ingrained in our pop culture, shaping how we experience fear on screen. The Scream Queens era, for instance, brought us a new level of self-aware horror. It was a brilliant meta-commentary on the genre itself, where characters knew they were in a scary movie and often tried to play by the established rules to survive. Think back to films like Scream and I Know What You Did Last Summer. They were fun, they were campy, and they campaigned to kill, all while winking at the audience. But as time went on, horror evolved. The pendulum swung from meta-humor to raw, visceral terror. The Screams era brought a new level of fear to the table, with films like Get Out and A Quiet Place, pushing the boundaries of what we find terrifying by grounding their horror in social commentary and profound, relatable silence. These tropes, whether old or new, have a way of sticking with us long after the credits roll. They tap into our deepest, most primal fears, of the dark, of the unknown, of losing control, making us squirm in our seats and question our own mortality. But what's truly fascinating is how these tropes have adapted over time, reflecting our changing societal values, anxieties, and even our technology. The challenge of keeping horror fresh and engaging in an industry saturated with cliches is a monumental one. With so many films out there, it's incredibly hard to stand out from the crowd and create something truly bone-chillingly terrifying. Certain tropes can both enhance and detract from the viewing experience, making it a delicate high-wire balancing act for filmmakers to strike. Get it right, and you have a classic. Get it wrong, and you have a forgettable paint-by-numbers affair. One of the most frustrating things for horror fans is when a film relies too heavily on overused cliches without adding a fresh perspective. We've seen it all before. The creepy old house, with a dark past. The group of friends who make inexplicably bad decisions and venture into the woods. The car that won't start at the worst possible moment, and of course, the final girl, who always seems to survive. But when done well, these very same tropes can be incredibly effective, evoking a sense of nostalgia and a comforting familiarity in the viewer, right before the rug is pulled out from under them. Take, for example, the final girl trope. This staple of horror cinema has been around for decades, but it still manages to evoke a sense of tension and suspense. She's the one who is resourceful, morally upright, and ultimately, the one we root for. When done well, it's a powerful tool for building anticipation and creating a deep sense of investment in the character's fate. We're not just watching her survive, we're surviving with her. But when overused or poorly written, it can become predictable and stale, turning a potentially empowering figure into a tired cliché. Jump scares, on the other hand, are a more divisive trope. Love them or hate them, they have a way of getting under our skin. A well-timed jump scare is a masterclass in tension and release, making us jump out of our seats and then laugh at our own visceral reaction. It's a physical jolt. But when overused, they can become cheap and manipulative, a lazy substitute for genuine atmospheric dread. The worst offenders are the cat scares, where a loud noise turns out to be something harmless. They offer a momentary shock but ultimately detract from the overall viewing experience by crying wolf too many times. Psychological horror is another area where tropes can be incredibly effective, often because they prey on our minds rather than just our startle reflex. Films like The Shining and The Exorcist have become synonymous with the genre, tapping into our deep-seated fears of isolation, madness, and possession. These films don't just show you a monster, they make you question the reality of the characters, and by extension, your own. By playing on our psychological vulnerabilities, these films create a lingering sense of unease that's incredibly hard to shake, staying with you for days. This desire to blur the lines between audience and character found its ultimate expression in the found footage genre. It exploded in popularity because it broke the traditional cinematic mold, promising a raw, unfiltered reality. The shaky cam, the unpolished audio, the feeling that you're watching something you were never meant to see, it all works to create an unparalleled sense of immersion. More recently, this has evolved into the screen life subgenre, where the entire story unfolds on a computer or phone screen. It's a brilliant reflection of our modern lives, turning the familiar safe space of our digital world into a claustrophobic trap. The horror feels immediate and terrifyingly personal. One film that comes to mind when discussing modern, effective horror is Hereditary, which redefined the expectations of what a family drama-turned-horror film could be. With its slow, burning tension, unbearable sense of dread, and shocking plot twists, it left audiences genuinely gasping for breath. It's a perfect example of how a well-executed trope, in this case, the cursed family lineage, can leave a lasting traumatic impression on the viewer. This also touches on the rise of folk and cosmic horror, which often favor slow, creeping dread over jump scares. They explore the terror of ancient traditions, incomprehensible forces, and the horrifying realization that we are insignificant specks in a vast, uncaring universe. The fear comes from ambiguity and the existential dread of the unknown. The use of practical effects in horror films is another area where tropes can be incredibly effective, and it's a topic I'm passionate about. There's something uniquely unsettling about seeing a creature or a gruesome transformation come to life on screen. The ranchable beast. It adds a level of realism and weight that CGI, for all its advancements, often struggles to replicate. This is the heart of body horror, the fear of our own flesh betraying us. The tactile, visceral nature of a well-made practical effect, the way it moves and interacts with the real world, can be deeply, deeply unnerving because we know, on some level, that it was on set. In recent years, we've seen a fascinating dual track in the genre. On one hand, there's a resurgence of classic horror tropes, with legacy sequels and remakes like Halloween, and films like Midsommar paying homage to the genre's roots while updating them for a modern audience. But at the same time, we've also seen a wave of innovative, boundary-pushing horror films that are redefining what we find scary, often labeled elevated horror. This has sparked a debate: is horror meant to be a funhouse thrill ride, or a serious piece of art? I believe the answer is both. The genre is vast enough to contain both popcorn slashers and profound meditations on grief, and that diversity is its greatest strength. As we look to the future of horror, it's clear that these tropes will continue to evolve and adapt because the things we fear are always changing. With the rise of streaming and social media, we're seeing new ways for horror fans to engage with the genre, share their experiences, and even participate in creating new forms of horror like ARGs or interactive stories. The toolbox of terror is always expanding, and I, for one, can't wait to see what new nightmares filmmakers will construct with it. The key, as always, will be finding that perfect balance between familiar tropes and innovative storytelling. So what are some of your favorite horror tropes? Are you a fan of the slow burn dread of cosmic horror, or do you live for a perfectly executed jump scare? Do you have a go-to film or franchise that never fails to send chills down your spine? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments. If you're a fan of horror films and enjoyed this deep dive, be sure to check out some of my other videos on the topic. From detailed explorations of specific franchises to broader looks at the genre as a whole, I've got plenty of content for you to sink your teeth into. Thanks so much for watching, and try not to have too many nightmares.